I think Donald Rumsfeld is one of the most evil human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. And I find it hilarious that I marched against No Blood for Oil in college, and now Dick Cheney and the Cheneys are Team Biden, and now everybody on the left in America is a war hawk. How times have changed in 20 years blows my mind. But in your estimation, and your passion about this, and first of all, thank you so much for your service, and I'm glad a guy like you is on our side. How do you said that the economics are unsustainable. The economics of imperialism are unsustainable. How you have to decimate an entire country, then you have to occupy it for generations. So the concept of going in as a peacekeeper and setting these places up, America, the revolution, we didn't beat Britain. We just outlasted them. We waited until it was unpopular enough at home, and they were like, these are our cousins, let them have the place. The War of 1812, they came back and kicked the shit out of us. And then thank God Napoleon got antsy and said, I'm going to fight. Otherwise, we'd still be British again. And then Vietnam, over and over and over. The economics of imperialism, unless you're going to go in on some von Clausewitz shit and just mow everything to dust and start over, you can't do this anymore. You can't fight these wars. They're unsustainable.
Which is why this commission is so important, right? Because we have to fundamentally change how we go to and come home from a war, right? And if we change what we're going into, and we have a different end state in mind, right? All right, you just described it perfectly. For too long, our end state has been the World War II model. We come in, we beat you, right? We're now in charge. Yeah. You, like the Japanese and the Germans, go along with it and don't fight back. How often does that actually happen, right? By the way, von Clausewitz is how we win World War II. We basically steamroll both of them, right? When we actually drop atomic weapons on another country. That's how we get these people to capitulate. Every other example that you...
There's a profit incentive now.
That's what we have. You're right. The economics of imperialism don't work. The way that we go to war doesn't work. And it needs to be fixed. This can't happen again.
What was the very first thing that Biden's new Secretary of Defense did? He gave a $250 million contract to Raytheon, right? Who did he work for before he was Secretary of Defense?
It's a revolving door.
How's that okay?
It's not. We're supposed to have ethics laws in this country. There's supposed to be a ban on lobbying and everything. But again, as you pointed out, the rich and the elite and the powerful get to have special privileges.
Do you think that ever goes away?
Yes.
How? No, but your strategy where you're going to, do you think this ever goes away? And show a time in history where that's gone away.
Marie Antoinette would say it goes away.
Okay.
The powerful can only sustain power for as long as the powerless agree that they're powerless, right? Especially domestically. I've never in a million years would have thought that you could shut New York City down for 2 years and the New Yorkers would go along with it. I never in a million years growing up in that area, I would have never thought that people would be like, you know what? Yeah. I'll go bankrupt. It's fine. I don't mind. Yeah, whatever it takes. I know that this doesn't make any sense, wearing masks 6 feet apart. The bums on the subway, they're walking around doing everything you're telling everybody not to do, and they're surviving for years. But I whatever you say, de Blasio, in a million years, I would have thought there would have been a riot. I would have thought there would have been a revolution. I would have thought there would have been people, tarred and feathered and ran out of town on a pole. And it's not happening anymore. It turns out, they said the pen was mightier than the sword. The camera phone is mightier than the sword, man. The camera phone is the most powerful weapon ever created. People are so afraid to, and I think the problem, Pat, becomes in this moment, you talk about law and order a lot. In this moment, it's such a dangerous moment because the only people that are making any sort of positive moves are the type of people that have absolutely no regard for the consequences of law and order. Criminals, autocrats. What this is really going to be for people looking back at this 500 years, you were talking about 1419, people that are writing about this time, they're going to say democracy may be a great idea, but as long as there are autocrats and dictators, you may not be able to sustain it.
So there's a guy named Benjamin Barber who wrote a book called Strong Democracy back in the 90s. And basically what he argues is that there's a progression of democracy that it coincides with a progression of economies, right? So economies go from agrarian to industrial to post-industrial, or what we would call basically creative economies, right? And we're in a creative economy. We're post-industrial. Britain's post-industrial. Korea's post-industrial. Japan's post-industrial.
Yeah. Camille Paglia has talked about this a lot. This is where androgyny comes in.
Well, so what he argues, though, is he says that the sort of the harmony state of that we all grew up thinking of what capitalism and nation-state relations and democracy should look like is the post-World War II environment, pre-true globalization. What he basically calls is like the 50s and the 60s. And what he argues there is that before you had transnational corporations, economies had companies that were based only in the United States, right? You had, Disney was just an American company. Ford's an American company, right? So they're subject to American law, and if they want to do business, they follow American law. They don't really have to worry about.
Yes and no, though. I mean, Coca-Cola made Fanta to sell sugar water to the Nazis.
But that's where he gets the point. Is he argues that once you have transnational corporations, once capitalism expands beyond the borders of the nation state, transnational corporations actually become the most powerful entity on the planet, right? Because they're beyond government regulation.
Hard to argue with that.
Okay. So what Benjamin Barber argues is that the only way to actually reel in the negative effects of rampant runaway capitalism, which we have robber barons now,
well,
right?
that's corporatism. It's not really capitalism.
Global federalism.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's the only, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that's where we move as a species.
No. That's what they're trying right now.
The idea. Look, you have on your list here this.
So the problem is government. So we need a more giant global bureaucracy.
Listen, you have to think of it. You're thinking of it as a one government, like UN thing, and I'm talking of it more like the United States of Earth,
where Xi Jinping is in charge of Earth.
It's a democratically elected thing.
Okay. Who's agreeing to that?
I'm telling you, I think that's where we move to.
Xi Jinping is agreeing to that.
There's no way the nation state, if you are fundamentally arguing for the nation state, which has been around since the idea of the Treaty of Westphalia, I think at this point, honestly, you're arguing from a 20th century mindset. We're beyond it. We're in something different.
I disagree with you.
I'm telling you right now, this is where the human race is headed. Whether you like it or not, this is where I guarantee, I predict within 100 years.
You think there's going to be a common language within 100 years?
I don't know.
There's going to be common culture in 100 years?
We're moving towards one.
No.
We are moving toward, capitalism pushes us this way.
No, stop.
It does.
My gosh, capitalism pushes us this way.
Why? The efficiency. The efficiency of being able to, the efficiency of one.
There's no way. Listen, let me ask you a question. How long are you going to tolerate if I slap you on the back really hard? How many times?
How often?
I keep doing it to you, right? If I get up right now and come to your back, and I just start slapping your back really hard, how many times can I get away with it?
Probably once.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say to you, right? But let's just say your first reaction is going to be what? What's the matter with you, right? Stop. But you're first going to say what? Stop. If I do it again, you and I are probably brawling over here, right? Okay. I don't think, I think the history of mankind, you've always had people that are driven by power and control, and you've had people that are driven by freedom and leave me the hell alone, okay? One group masters the art of manipulation. The other group masters the art of persuasion. The strength of those that are driven by power and manipulation is they sell their concept more because they're better at bitching and crying and complaining because they have more time on their hands. The weakness of those who are driven by freedom, leave me alone, is they're so occupied building something, creating something, winning for them and their families. They don't have time to bitch. They don't care to bitch. They're not going to go out there and try to do anything to you. But if you sit down with them and you have the ability to reason, they can persuade you and say, here's why I live my life this way, right? If the person's willing to pursue, be open to it. Now, historically, go and look at religions. Many people will say most religions were created to control a populace. Let's just say. I'm a Christian. Some will say, that is a form of, the 10 Commandments to get people to not do anything to each other. Don't do anything to a guy's wife and don't murder and don't do this. Fine. You take 100 different religions and you put the structure together, about 90% of it is what? Similar things. You're not get to pick and choose. You want to be a Christian, Presbyterian, whatever you want to be. Similarities right there. Jewish, Christian, pretty much the same thing. Christians have one other guy that came afterwards, and they think he's a Jew. Christians think he's a Jew. Christians think he is the Messiah, right? Okay. But the ability to want to control isn't anything new. The difference is people are a little bit more, not a little bit, more wiser today. The negative side of it is we have 1,000,001 distractions today that we didn't have before. This is the ultimate distraction that we have today, right? So where am I going with this? Here's where I'm going with this. I don't think, I think there's a point where you can't push people that are driven by freedom too much. I think if you cross that line, you're going to see a side of theirs you've not seen before. I think that's kind of the direction we're going right now. People are rising up. You're a guy that voted for Biden. You go up against him. And you're willing to come to a podcast like this and have a conversation, and we go back and forth. And the people that win today is the audience, because the audience sees us having differences. We're having this discourse, and they walk away and say, screw Pat, screw Matt, screw Gerard. Or, dude, Gerard's my guy. I agree with him. I wish Adam was here. Pat's wrong. Whatever they're going to do. But the audience is winning right now, right? So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.